Yes. All right. How you doing, Lieutenant Governor?
All right. I was like, I don't know if they know we're here. We're here. I swear.
Yeah. No, I had a little bit of tech problems on my end. I had to leave and then come back, and my colleague Carmina is actually in the other room right now. So we're gonna get started in just a moment. I'm gonna go off camera and kind of handle some things on the back end. Okay.
Okay. So we're here. I'm gonna mute myself. And are we hard start at 7 or maybe like a soft start?
It'll be a soft start. We'll probably give folks a few more minutes to show up.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, friends.
Okay.
Hello. I had a little tech issues, but I think we solved it. Councilmember Khalil was here, and then I think I asked her to leave and come back so we can try to get her on screen.
And I think Malcolm is in DC, so his staff is getting him in as well.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Good evening, Lieutenant Governor. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Great to be here. Thank you.
While we're waiting, I just want to recap in your mind. If you remember me, when you were running for Lieutenant Governor at the primary level, I was with Philly's Women Rally, and I invited you to come and have that primary discussion group with all the candidates that were running for Lieutenant Governor. That was a discussion where we had the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, and we were at Norristown School District High School. And I met you back then before you got elected, and it's just a pleasure to have you tonight.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I always, our campaign keeps, recycling clips from even back in 2016 when I spoke before the group. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
So Angela, what do we want to do about Ms. Khalil? Nick?
So what was the initial problem with her?
She was here. Okay. I couldn't let her in. I couldn't do anything in the moderation panel at the bottom. So I put in the chat, asked her to leave and come back. I guess we're waiting on them to come back.
Okay, I see that she's in the chat right now, and she said, hi, Pat. Hello. If you can kindly ask to come back in using it should be blue and say ask to share mic or audio and visual at the top right-hand corner of this black square, and we should be able to get you back in here.
Oh, and Malcolm just left.
Yeah, he was here and he's gone. But well, hopefully we can get everyone. Okay, she says she can't get in. So
did she register as a presenter?
She shouldn't even have to. Okay, here's Malcolm. We have Malcolm back. Are you clicking? Please respond in the chat. Alexandria, are you clicking the blue share button to get in?
At the top right.
At the top right-hand corner.
Hello, Rep. Kenyatta. We see you.
Yes. You're muted.
But I can't hear him.
Alex, I just see in the message just says she can't get in.
Alexandria, if you can hear this, can you put in the chat if you're using a Chrome or Firefox browser? because that would be the only reason I could think that you would be having a difficulty is if you are using some kind of alternate browsing system. And to everyone who's already tuned in, I apologize for this. Hopin works really, really well till it doesn't.
So I'm not seeing the chat at all. So let me know if there's anything anyone says that I need to know.
Angela, do you see? I don't see the chat either, but do you see her responding to whether she has?
She's not responding to me. And just so you guys know how to see the chat, there's up at the top by the number that says 47. You should be able to pull that over. So that slides the chat back and forth.
Yeah,
I'm going to give this,
She asked her, can she hear Angela? And Alex said no. That's the last correspondence in the chat that I can see.
All right, Angela, Malcolm is also saying that he can't unmute.
Oh, heavens.
Can I unmute him? Hold on, let me see if I can. Is he back? What happened?
So Miracle Jones from One Hood had this problem earlier today, and all day I prayed that one of you would not have this problem tonight.
Okay, so he's rejoining.
Okay.
Let's see. All right, so let me let him in.
Yes, so poke Malcolm in and hopefully.
All right, but I know that I can do something up here.
No.
He
should. Oh my heavens. So
what was the technical issue on her end that she couldn't unmute?
No,
she was on a cell phone. I don't know if Rep Kenyatta is on his cell phone. But that was basically, we went through every possible thing with Miracle and could not.
Let me find out from Ashley. Hold on.
For everyone who's already tuned in, thank you for your patience, and I apologize profusely on behalf of the entire Keystone Progress organization for the hop-in technical difficulties.
What about Miss Khalil? What are we going to do? I don't have her number.
I don't either.
All right. I'm going to go video off and work on something. Will you work on Mal? Hold on. I'm going to make some calls.
Okay. All right. So it would appear that someone is handling Miss Khalil's problems. She is in there someplace awaiting approval to show herself, except for that's not happening on our end at all. There's no one waiting to be approved, and I don't even have Malcolm Kenyatta then.
I got you, babe. I got you. Angela, Malcolm's coming back. I'm going to try to deal with Khalil, okay?
Okay, you handle that. If we can get Malcolm back.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for being patient.
It is so appreciated. If we can get Malcolm's Representative Kenyatta's volume to work, I'll feel like we're at least at a better place. He's not back yet, though, and I'm the only one left. Oh, yeah, well, no comment, Frida. No comment. There's not much that I can do on this end until someone appears for moderation. Carmina.
Just so you know, Angela, I was told by the campaign that he's going to get on Chrome. So just give me a second, and I'm trying to call.
Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, great. That is wonderful news. So we should be in business here very soon. Lieutenant Governor, do you have any interesting campaign stories you'd like to avail us with?
I don't. Although Laura Nevitt just said that she has a number for Alex and is calling her. If you can see the chat, I don't know who can.
Yeah, no, I can see the chat. Well, okay, yeah. we're gonna get there. I think if Malcolm comes back on with on Chrome, hopefully that'll resolve that issue, and we can at least get
is it a laptop cell phone issue, or is it the browser issue? Do we know?
It's a browser issue. Unfortunately, it seems to be. Okay.
Okay, I think I did
Woo!
it. There you go.
You're
We
here.
can hear you.
Yes.
Good.
Well, two out of three. So
I felt like I was back in the state house. My mic was cut off.
Oh, listen, the state legislative Black Caucus presented before this session and actually spoke about their indignity of mic cutting, having their mics cut off regularly. So I'd say, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna give this Nick, if you're Carmina, you still there?
I am.
Okay.
I'm on the phone.
All right. Well, let's do this since we have a full house here waiting. How about we start in about 2 minutes? Does that sound okay? And then if we can manage to get Ms. Khalil on here, then she can hop right in. All right. I appreciate everyone who's sticking with us through all this. We're virtual, man. You would think after 2 years that we would have really, figured this all out. But it's every new platform brings new issues.
So Ms. Khalil is being called, and we're just going to give it another minute to find out. And I should be getting a text.
That sounds good. As soon as you and Nick are comfortable starting, like I said, we have we have a house here waiting. Can we have some music and dancing while we wait? Come on now, Richie. You want me to invite you up here? You can get right on this screen and sing and dance.
How are you talking to him?
He's listening to us right now.
We can't see the chat, Carmina. You and I.
Is it just me? Right, I can't see anything. All right, listen. Let me. It would be my situation that I wouldn't be able to see all that you're seeing, but I don't need to. I got two great men waiting to be talked to by us. How are you, Malcolm?
I'm doing good. I'm with you twice in a week. This is pretty
How
good.
about that? And I dressed up again just for you, right?
Oh, thank you, darling. Good to see you.
Listen, while we're waiting, you were there. How was it in the Rose Garden today? Maybe you could shed light on that. How was that?
A really emotional moment. In so many of these critical roles, we've never had people of color. You think about, the 115 plus justices we've had on the Supreme Court. It was a surreal moment. And to hear the justice designate, quote Maya Angelou, to say, I'm the hope and the dream of the slave. I think that was a moment that got a lot of eyes teary, on the South Lawn there. And, this is why these elections are so important. We have Pat Toomey who voted no. I don't know how you look at her resume and say no.
One of the other things I'm emotional because it's really, okay, hold on. Okay. I apologize. Lieutenant Governor, how do you feel about what happened this week?
I mean, it's an extraordinary development. I think it's going to take the Supreme Court. I mean, 40 years from now, she'll still be on there, making sure that that viewpoint, that vantage point is represented for the first time ever in the Supreme Court. It's incredibly encouraging. It's the only tragedy is that it's the same balance of 6-3. We could not have found a finer replacement for Justice Breyer. I just lament the ideological makeup that is a 6-3, and that's something that and it also deeply concerns me that the Republicans are refusing to answer if they, God forbid, get the majority, if they would entertain any more of President Biden's future nominees. And I shudder to think of her path had there been a Republican majority, and to deny this historical moment to Representative Kenyatta's point. I don't know how you could look at her resume and say, no. I mean, ideologically, you're not going to agree with her on everything if you're a Republican, but the fact that she is supremely qualified is beyond question. And that's where we have descended into nasty partisanship, that it's not a matter of agreeing with everything that a justice comes before you, but it's, is this person worthy of this title? And she is beyond question.
Absolutely. So we're going to get started. I have a little opening, so maybe she'll come in as we're reeling in. I want to begin with really framing the context of why we're here at this 13th annual Keystone Progress Summit, right? The people who make up today's progressive movement share a set of fundamental American values: equal opportunity, mutual responsibility, effective and responsive government, the hope and aspirations for a better, more inclusive, prosperous future for all of us, for all Americans, especially for all Pennsylvanians. So we hold tonight's 13th annual summit to celebrate these shared values and to build them, and to build on our discussions, our programs, our messaging, and our policies. So without further ado, we are going to start tonight's evening. So welcome and thank you. My other moderator tonight is Mr. Nick Pressley from We the People. And we wanted to open up today's discussion unconventional, in the sense that, and we talked about this at the last panel with the legislative caucus, emotional intelligence, right? In essence, the short rip is emotional intelligence is one's ability to understand your emotions versus someone else's emotions. So for the context of just that basic element, I'm going to ask you a question. And when we think about the competencies of emotional intelligence, there are 5 competencies: self-awareness, managing emotions, motivating oneself, empathy, and social skills. And those are all excellent attributes to have as an adult, but especially as an elected official, because it's very important how you respond to your constituents. So I just have one question for each of you, and answer it as you wish, right? So, Lieutenant Governor, I'm going to start with you, and Malcolm, you'll be next. Is that okay? Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? All right. Very quick question, Lieutenant Governor. You notice your staff member is having a bad day. How would you approach him or her?
Sure. All of us can have a bad day. It's not uncommon. I mean, campaigning is hard, difficult work. And, even on my official side, I've actually done that, where I'll notice somebody, is not, themselves, and I'll just, take them aside and just simply, in a private space, just ask them, is there anything wrong? Is there something happening in your personal life that any way I can help, any way I can relate? Do you need the day off? Do you need some time? Do you, we always are very, very generous with, time off, whether it's family issues. It's not a matter of having to divulge, any personal problems, whatever. It's like, we trust our people, or we trust our staff, and we know that if they aren't in a position to do what their best work, then they absolutely have the flexibility and the latitude to take a mental health day, to address, any personal issues, what they might be having, health issues, what have you. The hallmark of our campaign is always making sure that our staff's well-being comes first. And numerous times during this long campaign, we have always allowed our staff the latitude to do whatever it takes for them to get back to feeling 100%, or where they can believe that they can perform their duties effectively. And making sure that I would extend that kind of courtesy to a staffer, just the way I would want it extended to me if I were a member of a staff, working on a campaign. That's how I try to. That's the standard that I hold ourselves to. And I'm proud to say that we haven't had any staff turnover, and we just keep growing our team. And that's our core governing philosophy, is like, whatever you need, hire great people and give them the flexibility and the freedom to do what they need to do to address their own mental well-being or address a family issue, a personal issue. And it does not require them to provide in-depth detail. It's just do what you need to do, no questions asked.
Thank you so much. Excellent. Thank you. And Representative Kenyatta, how do you approach collaboration during your staff meetings?
So first of all, thank you so much for doing this. And as I said, good to see you, Nick. Good to see you as well. And for me, I've been incredibly lucky, because I will tell you, public-facing leaders, we get too much credit and too much blame. There is an entire team of folks who make this possible. And I'm lucky that in my district office, in my Harrisburg office, and also on the campaign, that in all three of those, I have incredible Black women who are holding down the shop, and who aren't just there to work for me. They're there to work with me and to lead. And I joke often, but it's true. I have a bunch of incredibly talented women. They tell me what to do, and I go where they tell me to go. And they have a lot of say in terms of what we do and how we can best serve. Because in this moment, when we think about the pandemic and the horrific loss of life that we've seen from that, when we think about the gun violence crisis that we're seeing, we are all undergoing overlapping collective traumas. And a part of what we desperately need are more and more people who understand the challenges we face. And so a part of what I want to always make sure I'm doing is to have people lead from their areas of strength. I have a staff member who tragically has lost multiple members of her family and friend group to gun violence. And so she very much wanted to take the lead on making sure that when these crises pop up in the district, that she's there providing folks with resources and services. She has an incredible therapist, which she always brags about. And she says, I need to be talking to people and making sure that they get somebody to reach out with that hand and that help that she desperately needed in her darkest moment. And certainly it's true around education policy and so many other areas. We wanted to put together a team of people that had expertise in a variety of different arenas, and that we put them in a position to lead on those areas and to make sure that we're using the office and the resources of our office to allow issues that bubble up to be addressed by the staff that has the best knowledge and understanding of the issue.
Thank you so much. Mr. Pressley?
Sure. Thank you. And thank you, Rep. Kenyatta and Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, for your answers. We're going to reverse order this time, so y'all should get ready to answer twice in a row until we're able to get Councilwoman Khalil in here. I see you're in the room, Councilwoman. We're still working on getting you in. I'm going to go from something a little deep with Carmina's question. It's something very, very a question you probably get asked all the time, which is, why should progressives vote for you?
Well, you know what? I think there's been no argument that every progressive group who has weighed in on this has supported our campaign. the Working Families Party, all the progressive wards in Philadelphia, so many progressive unions, so many progressive elected officials have supported this campaign. And I think they've done so because not only do I walk into this talking about our progressive values, but people understand that I understand the issues we're talking about in my bones in a very serious way. You know, if we are going to change the Senate, which I desperately think we need to do to change the way the Senate does business, turns out we have to change the senators. We have never had somebody in the Senate who's going to walk in with the perspective that I have. You know, I grew up in a working poor family in North Philadelphia. My dad was a social worker. My mom was a home healthcare aide. I got my first job at the age of 12 washing dishes at a little vegan soul food restaurant because we weren't always able to make ends meet. I watched my mom, who worked 12, 16 hours a day, come home after making sure the folks she served got their medication on time and have to come home and ration her insulin. I buried both of my parents by the time I was 27, simply because they didn't have the type of healthcare that every single family deserves. And so I think that progressives who are still making a decision, and certainly the progressives who've already made a decision in support of our campaign, have looked at my record of actually being a legislator, being in the room helping to advance progressive policies, but have also looked at my life experiences and know that I am bringing the lived experience of so many people who never get a chance to actually be in the room fighting for themselves. And I think there's so many people. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody who would argue that when we think about the pandemic, it hit Black folks first and worst. When we think about gun violence, it's folks in communities like mine that are hit first and worst. When we think about the need to raise wages or the need to deal with the climate crisis and have environmental justice, that it's people like me who are impacted the most. When we think about so many Republicans who are trying to reverse marriage equality, saying you can't say gay in schools, going after trans folks. It's nice for people to say, I'm going to stand up for those things. That's wonderful. We need more people to do that. But there's no substitute for somebody standing up, fighting for themselves. And I think what, allyship looks like is not just taking the microphone and saying, hey, I'll mention these other people, but it's saying, hey, let me pass the microphone and make sure that folks who have not had their needs centered, have them centered. In our campaign, we have an opportunity to do that. We've built a coalition that is big and large and vast, and includes folks from all across the Commonwealth. And I think we have an opportunity not just win this campaign, but to govern in a way that I think will push forward all the progressive values we have. Thank you, Rep. Kenyatta.
Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, the same question. Why should progressives in Pennsylvania vote for you?
Yeah, great question, but respectfully, I usually take a slightly different turn on that when we were kind of asked the same question, but with a little different variation, where it's like, what makes you the best candidate? I mean, really, that's what we're being asked, and it's like I've always kind of stepped back from that question, where it's like, I don't believe my job as a candidate is to claim that I'm the best candidate. That's your job as a voter, and everyone watching this and everyone who will watch the recording of this, to decide who their best candidate is. My job, as I see it as a candidate, is to describe my record and talk about what's important to me and what I've done in my career. And, this is any number of the latest debates and forums that I've done in front of your group that date all the way back to 2015 and 2016. And in that first Senate race, I was the true progressive in that race. And I was running on things as outrageous as a $15 an hour minimum wage, on basic healthcare as a fundamental human right for each of us, regardless of your ability to pay and your insurance status. I was running on the basic premise that the union way of life built the middle class and built our country, and it delivers security, and it's one of the most progressive inventions of all time. Running on this idea of basic fundamental equality and equal protection under the law for our gay and trans communities. Running under the banner that Roe v. Wade is under attack and will increasingly get more and more under attack. In fact, one of the videos my campaign circulates from 2016 is from your forum, where I warn that they're already doing this in Texas. They're already coming for Roe v. Wade. And we need to stand up because they are looking to stack the Supreme Court and turn back the clock on all these fundamental issues. And 6 years later, that platform was considered, maybe too left. That's the platform now of the Democratic Party, essentially. And that's how much the game has changed. My campaign's values and the things that I'm running on haven't changed. And then in the middle of these two Senate campaigns is my time as Lieutenant Governor. I'm proud to say, as Lieutenant Governor, I took up the helm of the Board of Pardons, and we revolutionized the process to now where we have conferred more second chances than any administration in Pennsylvania history combined. And Governor Wolf just signed his 2,000th pardon just recently. And my goal is to have over 2,500 second chances before my time as Lieutenant Governor is gone. And we have freed more innocent and deserving people from needlessly dying in prison than any Lieutenant Governor. You have to go back all the way to 1978 to even come close to those numbers. And I've also championed ending the war on drugs, specifically marijuana prohibition, that has continually added at least 20,000 fresh cases in our criminal justice system every year, overwhelmingly disproportionately impacting people of color, which makes it one of the most pressing reasons why we need to legalize that and move past this essentially a racist law. And then fast forward to my campaign now, and this time running on the same issues. Haven't evolved on any of those, but what has changed is that we are now running the largest grassroots campaign of any challenger, Republican or Democrat, in the country. We're approaching 200,000 grassroots donors. Our average donor volume hovers between $28,000 and $29,000. We've raised a level of resources that done so in the most democratic way possible. And we have built a campaign that's in the nearly 90% of Pennsylvania zip codes. And we believe carrying what was considered the two progressive values as a Democrat moving forward. We believe that Democrats need to vote like Democrats, and we need to get some things done. Our campaign was the first campaign to call for the elimination of the filibuster, because we know there aren't 10 to 12 Republican senators of conscience that are going to come and say, you know what, you were right. We need to codify Roe v. Wade. We need to change and support voting rights legislation. That's just not going to happen. So I don't think progressive should vote for me because I'm the best. I hope you do, but that's ultimately your judgment, and I respect your judgment enough to just say this is the campaign that we've consistently run. I've been saying the same principles, running on them now for over 6 years, and I'd be honored to have your support, just as I'm honored to be here before you all again. So thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I want to add, if you see me looking off to my right, I have a second laptop over here that I can see the chat on. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on questions, and I noticed and really trying to get Councilwoman Khalil in here. I have the next question as well. So we're going to stick with you, Lieutenant Governor. This seat in the U.S. Senate, as we've seen over the last couple of years with the pandemic, and then we've seen some federal funds come into the state of Pennsylvania. What happens in Washington, D.C. affects what happens in Pennsylvania. Not only am I a board member for Keystone Progress, I'm also a director of state campaigns for PA Budget and Policy Center. So I deal with a lot of these issues on a statewide level a ton. Poverty underpins a lot of this, but we've got issues with education funding, issues with housing, issues with wages, so on and so forth. Is there any issue that you've kind of got your eye on? I know you mentioned marijuana prohibition, and I don't think you're going to get any argument from anyone in the crowd here on the fact that that needs to be repealed. Is there any particular issue or set of issues that you're kind of taking with you in your back pocket should you win the Senate race?
Sure. I think one of the most fundamentally outrageous economic realities in this country is our minimum wage. It's $7.25 an hour. $7.25 an hour. How can anybody provide food for themselves, let alone shelter and clothing and all the things that we all know that we need to survive? And I personally am embarrassed for our Democratic caucus in the Senate that we cannot agree to get together, stand, and raise that wage. What's $15 an hour? Well, back in 2015 or 16, that was a bridge too far. Like, really? Come on. But what is that? That's $31,000 a year. $31,000 a year if you work full-time, breaking your back in often not exactly what you'd call glamorous jobs, Hobby Lobby is not considered a progressive beacon of thought and policy, but they pay their employees $18.50 an hour to start. And if Hobby Lobby's figured it out, why can't the Democratic caucus figure that out? So from my perspective, poverty starts with your job and your wage. And you may have a job, but if it's not at a wage that allows you to live in basic security and dignity, then that is not America holding up its end of the bargain. I believe there should be a basic covenant between every citizen and the country that if you play by the rules, you work hard, you're doing what you need to do, you deserve the basic level of security and dignity and your ability to support and raise your family, in a way that is commensurate with somebody that's working hard over $2,000. That's $31,000 a year. Who is getting wealthy on $31,000 a year? Absolutely not. But right now we're still stuck at $725. So from my perspective, poverty, economic justice begins with how we value workers. And right now it is legal to pay a fellow human being $725 for an hour of their work. And our caucus has not yet united and said, this is outrageous. We got to change that. And if I'm your next United States Senator, that would be one of the very first things that I would not let up on, because we must get to a place where if you as a citizen are honoring your end of the bargain, we in the Senate, how can you make $175,000 a year as a senator and be okay with $725 as a minimum wage? I wouldn't be. And if I'm your next United States Senator, that would be first and foremost with one of the things I would take on.
Thanks a ton. Rep. Kenyatta, Malcolm, same question to you. We've got all these issues facing Pennsylvania. Part of your role in the United States Senate is going to be to help us back home. What are you taking with you in your back pocket when you go out there?
So I've talked about it everywhere I've gone, about this idea of America's basic bargain. It's about this idea that you can have one good job that's family sustaining, that pays at least $15 as the floor. But we also need to recognize that if you have a great idea and you want to start a small business, there needs to be an environment for you to do that as well. And for so many entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, particularly of color, or who are from poor working class communities, it is almost impossible for you to actually get the resources necessary, get that first loan to open that business and thrive. We know that small business ownership is one of the most important things we can do, entrepreneurship, to lift folks out of poverty and actually build wealth in Black and brown communities. Because I will tell you, in communities like mine, we need to build generational wealth. Almost zero generational wealth is held by Black and brown folks in this country, and it's despicable. Second, we have to make sure that every single family has a level of certainty that their kid is going to go to a good, fully funded school. It's why I've talked so passionately about making sure that we quadruple the funding to our Title I schools, our poorest schools all across the country, and that we make sure mental health care is integrated into every single school. And I talk a lot about a bill called Phillips Law, which maybe we'll have time to talk about later. I also talk about this idea that, if you get sick, you should be able to go to the damn doctor and then be able to afford to fill the prescription when you leave. It's why it's going to be so critical for us to make sure Medicare, which is the largest purchaser of prescription drugs, that it can negotiate those drug prices, that we take on the intellectual property attorneys that have allowed these folks who come up with new therapeutics to hold on to those patents for far longer than they should be able to, making it more difficult for those drugs to become generics and pull down the price. We also need to finally make sure people can retire with a level of dignity in a house that they were able to afford in the first damn place, in a community that is safe and clean. And when we talk about the racial disparities of these issues, it cannot be undercut. Right now, we are seeing story after story after story of the continued, not just legacy, but of the present day impact of redlining, of the present day impact of big banks and lenders not lending in the same way to Black and brown homeowners who want to buy that first house, even when those folks have a higher level of educational attainment. And so we've said for a long time that, education is the great equalizer. But if you go and actually look at the statistics on this, if you are white and have a high school diploma, you still are more likely to be able to buy that first home than a Black individual who has attained a secondary degree. Those are the facts and the realities. And so we have to make sure that we change the way in which these companies can do business, and that every American, no matter the color of your skin, no matter who you love, no matter how you worship, that you get a fair shot and a fair shake. That's what the basic bargain is all about. And that's what we've centered our entire campaign around.
Thank you, Rep. Kenyatta. Real quick, Carmina, just so you know, I'm going to hop out, hop back in. I think I can get Councilwoman Khalil. I'm in here, right?
Well, actually, I have an answer for that. She's at a remote location, and her cell phone service is preventing her from joining. So she sends her regrets.
Okay.
Thanks the organizers and the candidates for having the opportunity to be here. So,
all right, 2-person show. Let's continue rolling, Carmina.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I must tell you, when we were putting this together, I wanted to make sure that we talked about, again, the significance of you, whoever gets elected from Pennsylvania, being an open seat, right? And it goes to Lieutenant Governor's comment about the caucus. We need more people in the Senate on the Democratic side so we're not hostage. So I want to ask the question, what assurances can you give all Pennsylvanians that you won't be a mansion or cinema in the U.S. Senate? And the second part to that is, what will your leadership style be as one of 100 U.S. senators? So who does Malcolm, you have to answer that first, and then Lieutenant Governor.
Yes, ma'am.
How are we going to assure us that you're not going to get that free spot and go up there and be quiet? What are you going to do? We don't want you to be a mansion and cinema. We have 50 votes.
I think what more people are trying to get me to assure them is that I'm going to shut up, because I'm not going to be quiet on these issues. You have people can look at who I've been my entire life as an activist in my community, as an elected official, as a junior block captain. I've never been quiet about the issues that are facing our communities and so many of the solutions that the progressive community has put forward that can actually change people's lives. I don't have the luxury of being quiet. You know, I'm a poor Black gay kid from North Philly. You think I'm going to shut up about the things that we need to do? And I can tell you this, though. I've actually been a legislator. That matters. That you've been in that and sitting in the caucus room, that you've understood the process of filing amendments and trying to find unlikely allies in getting things done. I have been able to bring people together who, on so many things that we care about, who knows what the heck these people are thinking, frankly, to be a little candid here. But we've been able, on criminal justice reform, on mental health care, on hardening our digital infrastructure, to bring people together. But that is the importance of having people who actually have the lived experience of the issues that they bring up. It's nice for people to talk about any issue they want to talk about, but it's even better to have the people who actually have skin in the game be the ones who are advancing the issues that we are discussing. It's nice for people to talk about affordable housing. It's another thing to know what it means to take everything you own, have to put it in a couple of plastic trash bags and move to the next place. It's nice for people to raise a flag or say that they're going to support LGBTQ folks. It's another thing altogether to have my marriage, which I just got married 2 months ago, to have people just yesterday talking about the need for us to look at whether or not Obergefell is settled law. It's nice for people to talk about criminal justice reform or gun violence. It's a different thing altogether. You know, Carmina, I could go home tonight and have another person murdered in my community. So we need desperately to not just have somebody who's going to vote the way that we think that they're going to vote, but we need to have somebody who actually has a legislative record that we can examine, and also have somebody who you know in your bones is going to stand up for these core principles. And I got into politics because of self-preservation, because the people I love best were getting the raw end of the deal. And in the Senate, I'm going to make sure that doesn't continue to happen. And that's why I want to be your next United States Senator.
Excellent. Lieutenant Governor, I mentioned earlier this week to someone your latest commercial where the gentleman at the end said, Fetterman's going to make them understand. And I thought that was a powerful way to end your commercial. So how would you assure us that you wouldn't be a Manchin or a Sinema? And how would you lead as one of 100 senators?
Sure. Great question, because really that's the essence of this election right there. What kind of senator do you want to send from Pennsylvania? And I'm going to actually let Senator Manchin speak for me. He was interviewed in an article for Politico from a day or two ago, and Senator Manchin has essentially endorsed Representative Lamb in this race. And he said when he asked, what about John Fetterman? And he said, I've never met the man, but I've always said, if you want to eliminate the filibuster, elect him. Essentially, that's what he said. If you want to eliminate the filibuster, elect him, because he understands that I'm not going to vote anything like him. He understands that we were the first campaign in really, I think, nationally to call for the elimination of the filibuster. And we are the campaign that understands that anyone that doesn't support the elimination of the filibuster, unlike Joe Manchin does, assumes that you have 10 to 12 Republican senators that are going to join us and pass our agenda. And that, to me, is never going to happen. I have consistently said throughout this campaign that if you trust me with your vote in May and November, you'll always have my vote in Washington, D.C. You will never pick up your smartphone or the paper and find out that I've turned my back on the minimum wage or gay or trans equality or on protecting voting rights or passing the PRO Act or securing universal voting protections, at a national level. You'll never see that. It is not mandatory that any senator agree in lockstep with every part of the Democratic agenda. It is mandatory, in my opinion, that we meet the moment and realize where our country can go if we do not step up and stand together as Democrats and vote together as Democrats. So from my perspective, Joe Manchin, effectively saying, if you want to eliminate the filibuster, elect him. That's about as good as I've got in terms of my assurance to you that you elect me as your next United States Senator. You will have somebody that will absolutely lean in and join and be that 51st vote for any transformative bill or piece of legislation that is before us. And should that have some terrible political consequence back home, which I don't believe it would, but even if it did, it would still be a choice that I would gladly make, because if you aren't in this business and be willing to sacrifice your political career, if the political winds change, in order to be that force that allows the passage of transformative legislation that will affect and improve the lives of tens of millions of Americans, then you shouldn't be in this business, in my opinion. So in rooms all across Pennsylvania throughout this campaign, I've asked, who is a Manchin Democrat? And with absolute sincerity, I have not encountered one single Democrat that says, yes, that's who I want to send from Pennsylvania. So if that's the truth, then we believe we are that 51st vote. It's what it says on our own social media account. That's the essence of why we're running, to be that 51st vote, to stand in the gap and make sure that we don't ever get held hostage again as a party.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman. Thank you, Rep. Kenyatta. We're going to take a little departure from the program as planned. We're a little ahead of time, and we've got a robust audience here. I'm looking at the second laptop over here with a few questions. So we're going to go to our audience questions right now in the order in which they came in that I see here. And it looks like Michelle Green has the first one. It's for you, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman. She says, I drive through Braddock often. What specific programs did you do as mayor of Braddock that lets you claim success in getting that town to a better place? And then she's got a question for you as well, Rep. Kenyatta, that I'll ask after that.
Sure. Any number of one. My family, for example, my wife Giselle established the Free Store, which for the last nearly 10 years has eliminated a great deal of food insecurity, clothing insecurity. And there isn't one single child in Braddock that has to go without formula, clothing, diapers, a car seat, stroller, you name it, all at no charge to anyone. We have created affordable housing for seniors, for families, and for single adults, all on Braddock Avenue. 3 major projects during my time as mayor that centered around affordable housing, that to the entire spectrum of folks as well too. Numerous businesses throughout Braddock, many of them owned by people of color, that have opened. When I took over, we were a community that didn't have a functional ATM in effect. After UPMC Braddock decided to abandon our community and eliminate healthcare, I stepped in and fought back. Ultimately, couldn't save the hospital, but worked with local nonprofits. And now, for coming up on 10 years, we are celebrating an urgent care center that has provided healthcare for our residents for nearly the past decade. So there's playgrounds and a lot of other economic development that during my time that we're very proud of. And of course, Braddock, like every other place, particularly a community that's about 75% Black as Braddock is, suffered disproportionately during the pandemic than other areas. But there are a lot of changes there during my 4 terms as mayor.
Fantastic. Thank you for that answer. And then for Rep. Kenyatta, she continues to ask, she continues on to ask, what legislation did you support or co-sponsor to help the underserved in the state?
Oh my gosh. So a long list. That is the entire reason I ran. In my state rep campaign, I said that ending deep poverty is the moral and economic issue of our generation. I've introduced legislation doing a number of things. First, I'm treating deep poverty like the public health crisis that it is. Governor Wolf, declared a disaster declaration around the opioid crisis, and it become a national model. Now, obviously, with the Republicans pulling back, Nick, I know you were very involved in trying to stop it, but pulling back the ability to declare disaster declarations for a long term, and now they have to be re-upped every 27 days. That makes that more difficult. But we do need to understand that deep poverty is a health crisis. I also have a bill with Senator Hughes to create an intergenerational poverty commission modeled off of what they did in Utah. One of the things that it does is to say that any bill that comes to the floor that has an economic impact, anytime we have a bill comes out, there's a bunch of different analysis that legislators get to look at to say, what is this bill going to do? We get something called a fiscal note as well before we vote on a bill to say, what is the fiscal impact? We need a poverty note to understand what is going to be the impact on reducing deep poverty, which again, I think is the moral and economic issue of our time. You can look at things that I've done around mental health care, which I mentioned, because we know that the health disparities, particularly in mental health care, are drastic as it relates to low-income folks, especially as more and more mental health care providers have gone to private pay. If you want a culturally competent provider, it's going to be really tough to find one. That's unacceptable. We should do something about it. It's why I have co-sponsored so many pieces of legislation, introduced legislation around environmental justice issues, and stood with Governor Wolf as he took the ideas that I had, Representative Bullock, Representative Rabb, both of whom have endorsed me in this race, and did it as an executive order as we try to get the legislation done, and get it into statute. And so you can go on and on and on. When you look at the work that I've done, it reads like the type of legislator that we want in Washington.
Thank you. Couple more questions, if you don't mind, Carmina. We'll run through this real quick. All right, cool. Let's do this. So the next one is, and then since we started with you, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, with the last one, we'll start with you, Rep. Kenyatta, for this one. Richie says the United States is a nation in multiple crises. There are too many to list here, but one crisis that's at the top of his mind is the crisis of affordable housing. What are the root causes of this seemingly insurmountable problem, and what can the 2 chambers of Congress do to address this? Rep. Kenyatta, you're first.
Thank you, brother, for lifting that up. I mentioned my story a couple of times here tonight. If you want a senator that understands the crisis of affordable housing firsthand, I'm your guy in this race. I think that we need to do a couple of things. First, the pandemic and supply chain issues has made increasing our stock of affordable housing, difficult. But some of those supply chain issues have been resolved, and we need to simply build more affordable housing. I have had a number of issues with the way that PHA has done business, but I will tell you, I do not disagree with them when they say that we frankly do not have enough money to build enough units to meet the need that exists. Just in Philadelphia, our largest city in the Keystone State, we have 70 to 90,000 units that are going to be necessary to meet the affordability crisis right now. 70 to 90,000 units. That is a despicable statistic. We treat so often at the federal level, HUD, which is responsible for a majority of the funding to our public housing, we treat HUD like a second-class agency, as something that I guess we'll just kind of get around to. If I am your senator, you're going to be seeing me pushing for historic levels of investment into HUD and to make us be in a position to grow our affordable housing stock in a way that we haven't done since, I think, the late 80s, early 90s. Additionally, what we have to do, and I mentioned this before when you asked, Nick, what are the things that I'm going to take with me to Washington? We have to deal with financing issues from big banks and other lending institutions, that even if you want to buy that first home, things like student debt, which I believe I'm the only person in this campaign who said we need to cancel it. And if not the only, certainly the first, who said we need to cancel student loan debt. That debt to income ratio makes the affordability and the interest rates for people who want to buy that first home, makes it almost impossible in so many ways. And so this is an issue that I have led on, that I've talked about, and I've been so grateful for the affordable housing projects in my district, which we've worked very hard with PHFA and others to try to make sure there was the funding mechanism in place to actually bring those projects to fruition.
Thank you, Rep. Kenyatta.
Nick, can I respond? Yeah.
Yep.
Affordable housing, as I alluded to earlier, as mayor, during my time, we oversaw the creation of 3 large affordable housing projects, 3. And it's not targeted at one specific group. It is across the spectrum of groups, because affordable housing is an issue for everybody. It's not confined to the elderly. It's not confined to families or single adults. It's across the spectrum. It's just a fundamental truth. And you've heard the expression, the budget is the moral document. You want to find out what's important, see where the money goes. And our lack of affordable housing in this country is directly commensurate with the lack of funding and the priority that we make it as a country right now. You have an average apartment going for $2 million in cities like New York, and I don't know how anyone affords to live in these places. We have an affordable housing crisis in this country, and you look at the size of our defense budget, and then look at the size of our HUD budget, and our crisis in affordable housing requires a level of resources that's commensurate with the crisis that we have. We have a crisis of homelessness in a lot of the major cities, whether it's on the West Coast or the East Coast. And as mayor, we understood and realized that seniors need affordable housing, quality, safe, affordable housing. Families need stable, affordable housing that's conducive to raising a family, as well as single adults too. It's not an issue that is confined to one thing. And that was a hallmark of my race, of my time as mayor. And it's something that I'm very proud of. And, Malcolm brought up a good point about student loan debt, and I happen to agree, but our campaign also has called for a measure of student loan forgiveness. Pennsylvania is 3rd in the country with an average debt load of around $38,000. That is too high, much too high, and we have to address that. But we also have to address the underlying causes, why or how that accrued in the first place. It's one thing to clear some of the debt away, but if it reaccumulates for the next generation because it's just too expensive, our public state university system should be the most affordable in the country, and we should and again, invest an appropriate level of resources to make a quality state university 4-year degree or 2-year degree affordable, and community college, the transition should be seamless, where you can do 2 years at a free community college or a very low cost and have a perfect transfer over so you can enroll as a junior, thereby having the cost of your 4-year degree. And that, to me, it would be a priority if I'm your next United States Senator.
Nick, I just do want to quickly highlight, though, but this is the difference, right, between what I'm saying and what the Lieutenant Governor is saying. He supports a measure of student loan forgiveness. I support canceling student loans. And so I think that we are, saying two different things, and I think we should not misconstrue them as saying the same thing.
Thank you, Rep. Kenyatta. Let's move on. I got time for one more audience question, and we're going to go to something a little more lighthearted. Sound good? All right.
Well, possibly. What's the question, Nick?
The question is, oh man, I lost it. Do you support, and we'll start with Lieutenant Governor Fetterman for this one, do you support single-payer national health insurance phasing out for-profit private insurance, from Walter in the chat?
Yeah, I saw that question in the chat, and I thought about it. No, what I support is that healthcare is a basic fundamental human right. And that regardless of your ability to pay or your insurance status, that we should make sure that you have access to quality healthcare. I further believe that the fact that since our country develops many of the drugs that are used to treat the various diseases, we should not be paying the most of any country in the world. And we need to arrive at a place where Medicare is negotiating to save people enough money. So we expand Medicare to include dental, hearing, and vision. Why would we separate these three critical areas from overall health when we know that, for example, your oral health is closely tied to your overall physical well-being? And we should also lower the age of Medicare to include as many people as possible. I support whatever comes before me. And if my vote would be that deciding vote that would get it to the president's desk, I would sign whatever that looks like that gets us closer to universal access and universal health care for every single citizen. I'm less hung up on the exact what it must be, but very much fixated on the goal, and that is to make sure every single American has access to quality health care.
Thank you for that answer, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman. Rep. Kenyatta.
So absolutely, it's right on my website. I said that we need to get to Medicare for all. Certainly, we believe healthcare is a human right, but I'm saying plainly what I think we need to do. And I'm not just going to be the deciding vote. I'm actually going to be somebody in the room who's pushing to advance these things. And yet again, we keep tonight, for folks who are listening, just hear that subtle but critical difference. It's nice for you to be the deciding vote for the thing that everybody is already for, because that's why you're the deciding vote. It's a different thing altogether to actually be somebody who's going to advance these things and who's been able to actually move legislation, push for legislation in the legislative context. I mentioned it already. I lost both of my parents by the time I was 27 years old. That is far too young for any person. And I think about all the time how despicable it is that in this country, still the number one reason that people go bankrupt is medical debt. That should not happen in the wealthiest nation in the world. It doesn't have to happen. We can do so much better than this. When I grew up, so often my primary care physician was whoever the hell was on call at the emergency room. It doesn't have to be this way. I think that we can do so much better. And I think that that is the difference between having somebody who's like kind of for the things that you're kind of for, and somebody who's going to fight for those things because they have no choice. And this is their actual life. I'm fighting for things that relate to my actual life. And I know that there are Pennsylvanians in every single corner of every single race, maybe they worship or don't worship, who understand that and who want somebody who's going to actually go and fight for them.
Nick, can I
go ahead, Lieutenant Governor. I'll let him come back to you before.
Yeah. 6 years ago, I was, in these same kind of forums or debates talking about how critical universal healthcare access is. So this is something that I've spoken about, and this is something that I've advocated for. What I've said is consistently been, I will support and advocate for the best option that will make it to the president's desk to create universal healthcare for anybody, whatever that looks like. This is not holding universal healthcare access or increasing access for Americans hostage based on, a rigid ideology. For me, we've seen what happens when one or two senators dig in and refuse to engage with, okay, I don't have to agree with everything, but we need to move this forward because it's that important. I would not be that senator that would hold that up. I would be that senator to always advocate and come down on the side of expanding and enhancing and increasing access till we get to universal access for healthcare for all Americans. And that's the position that I've consistently held ever since I've become a candidate here. So thank you,
Lieutenant Governor. Let's change tracks a little bit. But first, I want to make sure I let y'all know that I just got the notice that this is actually being broadcast right now live on Germantown Radio in Philadelphia, 92.9 FM. So shout out to y'all out there in Germantown. Carmina, I'm going to kick it over to you. We're going to learn a little bit about the candidates for a second. Just this, Carmina, you got it. Go ahead. You're muted. Okay, you're muted again. Carmina, you're okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a lightning round. She's gonna unmute herself. There we go. Wait, there you go.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It keeps jumping. Okay. So Nick. All right, we're gonna do a lightning round. Go ahead.
You know what
Nick.
it is? It's that lack of broadband internet, okay, in rural Pennsylvania. So, okay, let's just call that out what it is. So, lightning round questions. I'm going to give y'all. We're going to go to each one of you real quick. We're going to try to be really quick with this, and then there's some spicy questions in the chat that I will come back to. So you might not have gotten off the hook if y'all seen those questions, okay? But I'll come back to those first, though. If I think if you remind me who we started with the last question was it you, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, I believe?
Truthfully, I don't recall.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we'll start with you, Malcolm. If you had to choose between invisibility or super strength, which would you choose?
Why is this the toughest question that you've asked today? I guess super strength. I don't like sneaking around.
Wait, Nick.
Go ahead, Lieutenant Governor. Do you have?
I didn't hear the full question. I didn't.
If you had to choose between having invisibility or super strength, what would you choose?
Oh, and I'd go with C, like a great head of hair. Like that's my honest answer. Yeah, I don't want to be invisible and super strength, but man, a nice head of hair would be a everyday kind of thing. So
sounds good, Carmina.
It's not.
Okay, she's having problems. Okay, what about favorite junk food, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman? What's your favorite junk food?
My favorite what?
Junk food.
Junk food. Wow, that's. I would say Cheetos. Cheetos. On the road on the campaign, I have too many Cheetos, too many late nights. Too much. I don't even want to know what's in it. Like if it sticks to your fingertips that bad, I don't want to know. But yes, they're definitely have a Cheetos issue.
All right, Rep. Kenyatta, how about you?
Ice cream, brother. Ice cream. I'm a big ice cream person.
Do you have a favorite flavor?
I don't like. You can't pick a favorite kid. You just have good ice cream.
Touche. Carmina, you can text me or send a message if you're. It comes on and then goes off. I'm so sorry. Okay, one more of these lightning round questions, and we're gonna get back to the audience, and we're gonna start to wrap this up soon. So, which one am I gonna ask next? We're gonna start with you, Rep. Kenyatta. Oh, you know what? This is a question that you probably both have gotten quite a bit. Who inspires you, Rep. Kenyatta?
You know what? I'm going to pick a group of folks. I can think of some folks who are no longer with us, like my grandfather or John Lewis or my mom or so many others. But I will say this generation Z that is so inspiring to me. Every time I get to, like I did this morning, pop into, a middle school or a high school class and hear the questions that they're asking, hear the vision that they have for the future, and see the ways that they're getting involved in so many cases so young, just like I did as a 12-year-old in my neighborhood. And so, there's a song that I love that says the kids are all right. And I think that that's true. The kids are all right.
Thank you, Rep. Kenyatta. Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, who inspires you?
Yeah, I'm inspired by Democrats that understand what really is at stake here in this election and what's coming in 2024. It's one thing to vote, and we should all vote. I want to be clear about that. But those that are willing to do it's not glamorous. It's hard work. It's cold. You get doors slammed on your face. You get hung up on. It takes up your free time, and who doesn't want more free time these days? But those that are willing to lean in and put it all out there like that, they inspire me because they understand what's at stake, and they realize that we almost went off the rails in 2016 and in 2020, with our election results, and they understand, and they're willing to put a maximum amount of skin in the game beyond just voting, even just writing a check or even donating to a political campaign, giving of themselves and volunteering, especially those in hopelessly red circumstances too, that they still find the motivation. We talked about the question. The first question was emotional intelligence. It's like self-motivating, the ability to get involved and realize what the stakes are in this race. The people that are listening to this right now, those that are willing to volunteer, those that are willing to get engaged and help us win and flip this seat. Pat Toomey is gone, and those that are committed to embracing the moment and making sure that this seat goes 2 for 2 blue in 22 here in Pennsylvania, those are the ones that truly inspire me because it represents a very high level of selflessness and willing to really contribute to such an important cause.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman. We're going to stick with you. I'm going back to audience questions. We're going to do 2 of those, and then I'll give you both a chance to kind of say something to wrap us up. Sound good?
It is good.
I see my co-host is still having y'all. If one of you get out there to do something about our broadband, please. Okay. All right. So this question is coming from Jordy Comas in our chat a little while ago. We're going to start with you, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman. How will you win in a way that builds the rural progressive movement? The rural progressive movement. Building the rural progressive movement, I think, starts with making sure that you understand the rural progressive movement. It makes sure that you interact with the rural progressive movement and realize just how difficult it is. I asked the question. We've always been every county, every vote, a 67 county campaign and strategy. And I believe we have a real affinity for rural progressives. I mean, it costs you a lot to be a Democrat in these rural areas. That's a fact. Your signs get stolen, you lose friends, your children get harassed if they wear masks in schools. You lose friendships, relationships are strained. I hear it all the time from these folks. So, in encouraging that and showing up, and, I was proud to support financially the rural caucus here in the Democratic Party as well, too. So, it's about supporting them, showing up, and championing what they're championing. They are often some of the truest of the true believers in the Democratic Party, and nurturing them and acknowledging the work that they do, because they are working in areas that left it or ignored the way it often has been in the past. These margins can shoot up above 75, even 80%. And they're the ones that fight back. They're the ones that field candidates or often candidates themselves in races that the load is so heavy. It'd be like trying to bench press 1,000 pounds, but they still step up and are willing to do it. And again, to the earlier question, that inspires me.
and talking about them and making them part of the conversation is one of the very critical aspects of our campaign, because we will need them, whoever the nominee is, we will need them in the fall to win and to blunt the margins for the Republicans in these deep red counties.
That is absolutely true. Rep. Kenyatta, how about you? With the rural progressive movement, what would you do to help grow that?
It's the way that we've built this campaign, going everywhere, talking to everybody, and also using this race as an opportunity to disrupt one of the biggest and OG big lies. That's what's happening in our urban centers and our suburban communities and our rural communities is so disconnected. I'll never forget being in Warren County, and I said to a group of folks that we just an informal sort of town hall sort of sprung up at an event I was at, and ended up talking to a number of folks for some time. And I said to them, if I just closed my eyes or recorded this conversation and played it back to people and didn't tell them where I was, this could have been a town hall in my neighborhood. That is the lived, connective life that so many working class people know all too well. Doesn't matter where you're from, when you know what it's like to sit at that table, look your kids in the eyes and say, baby, I don't know if we can stay here. I don't know if you can go on that class trip. I don't know if, if mom and dad is gonna be able to get the surgery that they need. Then something that is universal. And we have to take that message to every single part of the Commonwealth. And it's what we've done in this campaign.
Thank you so much, Rep. Kenyatta. We're going to stick with you for one more audience question. First, Carmina, hey, you back? Do you have volume? Do you know?
Can you guys hear me? All right.
Okay, I'll ask this question and we'll jump to you, Carmina. Sound good?
I'll close it out because all my questions are over. Oh, except that if you guys are open to a little bit more lightning rounds, because I worked really hard to make sure I tossed it up.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
All right. Well, this is one more question, and then we can go back to lightning round. Okay. So this is a question that actually it matters a lot to me. It's very near and dear to my heart. We'll start with you, Rep. Kenyatta. If elected and into the Senate, will you call on President Biden to permanently close the Berks County Detention Center? Will you commit to introducing and or co-sponsoring legislation to end all forms of immigrant detention?
Already have, will continue to do so. Easy
question. Lieutenant Governor Fetterman.
I would call for the end of detaining families and children, as I did back in the lieutenant governor's race. We were the only campaign to go visit the Berks Detention Center and call for the closure or the cessation of imprisoning families with children. That is not who we are as a country. That can never be who we are as a country. And immigration makes America America. My wife is a former dreamer, and her origin story and her lived experiences has informed my own on that. And we have always run an unapologetically, immigration forward campaign that we as a country need and deserve a humane and compassionate immigration response. So I would call on President Biden to eliminate at every juncture family detention and involving children and those that have otherwise not broken the law other than just seeking asylum, in our country.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman. Carmina, go next.
Wait a second, Mr. Pressley, while I was inoperable, was there a gun violence question asked?
I saved it for you.
Gentlemen, Representative Kenyatta and Lieutenant Governor, just tell us where your stance is on gun violence in terms of the need for federal legislation, either in police reform or criminal justice reform. Just real briefly, and then we'll go to some lightheartedness to end. Gun violence, where do we stand? Can you guys hear me? I see something frozen. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Carmina.
We can. Carmina, who do you want to answer first, my love?
Oh, Lieutenant Governor, if you could answer, where do you stand on federal gun violence legislation?
Absolutely supported. In fact, that's one of the main reasons why I called for the elimination of the filibuster. 80 to 90% of Americans support the elimination of, banning assault rifle ownership and common sense gun control legislation, red flag laws, and making sure we do everything we can to keep guns and weapons that out of the hands of those that would hurt others or themselves. It's just basic common sense. Why don't we pass it? Because you need 60 votes in the Senate, and that means you need those 10 to 12 Republican senators of conscience that thus far have been unwilling to advance even the most meager type of legislation, despite mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting that tragically and cynically don't even make the headlines as they should. We've become desensitized to it. So eliminating the filibuster is the only path to, as I see it, to achieving common sense gun reform legislation in this country. And we should not, as a society, allow private citizens to own weapons of war that are designed to kill as quickly and as efficiently as possible. They are not for hunting. They are not for home protection. They are weapons of commercial death and warfare, and they do not belong in the hands of citizens.
Representative Kenyatta.
As I said earlier, I live in a community where we have seen too many instances of gun violence. I laid out a 3-point plan of what I think we need to do to address it. And one of those things was gun violence legislation, including legislation like what I've introduced at the state level to deal with lost and stolen guns, taking on ghost guns, and so many other things. We need to do that. But I think we also, as progressives, need to have a real honest conversation about the fact that we are ignoring a big instance of gun violence that somebody in this very campaign was a part of. 9 years ago, the lieutenant governor saw somebody running down the street who he thought was involved in a shooting, went into his truck, got an illegally stored shotgun, held it to the chest of the individual, and for years now has changed the story about what happens and refuses to say a couple of simple words of "I'm sorry" and "I'll never do it again." And I think that this is something that we can't ignore. Just because the individual with whom the lieutenant governor held a shotgun to his chest didn't die doesn't mean Lieutenant Governor Fetterman wasn't involved in gun violence, in a type of vigilante justice that I don't understand any progressive who would justify that or be willing to turn a blind eye to somebody who refuses to say a couple of simple words. "I'm sorry, I wouldn't do it again." I said it at the debate that the lieutenant governor did not attend. He doesn't have to be racist to be wrong. I don't think John's racist, but I think he was dead wrong. He's had 9 years to apologize. He refuses to do so. And it's one of the reasons I don't trust that he's going to be somebody who's going to actually be able to take on this issue, certainly if he can't say "I'm sorry" for a situation he was personally involved in.
Yeah, I need to respond to that. Malcolm knows this, that, Malcolm knows that is just categorically false. His description, he knows, as does everybody else. It was an active shooter situation, and as Braddock's chief law enforcement officer and as mayor during a spontaneous shooting situation, I quickly called 911, got my son inside to safety, and there was only one individual out running from the scene of gunfire, wearing a ski mask of unknown race, running from the gunfire. And as Braddock's chief law enforcement officer, I made a split-second decision to intervene for the safety of our community, which our community, by the way, is 75% Black. And I never pointed the weapon at this individual, and that just is categorically false. My story hasn't changed in over 9 years. The only story that's changed is the individual that was involved in that. Mine has remained consistent. And you want to know something else? 4 months after that incident, I was elected by my largest margin ever by a community that's 75% Black, and was elected again to another term, even after that, for 2 more terms, as a 4-term mayor of a community, because they understood that it was about public safety and it was about protecting the community. Furthermore, during my time as mayor, I am a Democrat that confronted gun violence successfully. We went 5.5 years without the loss of life through gun violence or any kind of violence in our community. Never happened before, hasn't happened since. during that time and created a new community policing model that didn't result in any complaints or allegations of abuse or over policing. We worked with the community.
Thank you,
That's why I was elected by overwhelming margins, time and time again, of a community that was, beset by gun violence.
Thank you, Lieutenant
I have to respond to that because the Lieutenant Governor has been able to get away with this again and again and again. You don't have to take my word for it. At the time, the Lieutenant Governor said, I may have committed a crime. And if I did, I am not above the law. He was not held accountable because powerful men like him are very rarely held accountable. At the time, he said he thought he was trying to stop another hook. This was on Saturday in the afternoon. Schools were closed. He's never been held accountable for his shifting stories. And I think it's inappropriate that he wants to come here tonight, say whatever he wants, and expect us to buy the story. It's wrong, and it's going to be a problem for us in November.
So on that note, I'm not going to end with a lighter note, lightning rod, because this is a really serious issue. One of the reasons why we wanted to have this forum tonight, I do like the raw and uncut kind of conversation. We wanted to take an unconventional approach, but I want to hone in on the significance of this seat. And the significance of this seat is that we need to have a greater edge going into Congress next January. And so I want to end on a note asking you both as candidates to remember that you are serving human beings with real human being issues, and that we, whoever we vote in as our final candidate or primary then on, we need you guys to represent our issues. And I hope that after the primaries that we can all coalesce for a bigger picture, whoever wins, whoever loses. Because at the end of the day, there are human beings in Pennsylvania that have not been historically served. This is our chance to do a better job and to leverage our power. Now, I want to end on that note. Is that okay, Mr. Pressley?
I would love to give the candidates a chance for final responses, but there's a last question in the chat that I think after this exchange deserves an answer, and that is, and this is for both of you.
I can't see it.
Rep. Kenyatta. It's fine. And the question is, if you were not elected, will you support the one who wins?
Hell yes. If I'm not the nominee, to the extent that whoever the nominee is wants me doing events for them or whatever the case may be, I'm going to do that because we need to support the nominee. But we also need to make sure that we get the right nominee. And for the next 39 days, I'm going to be telling people why I think that's me.
Thank you, Rep. Kenyatta. Lieutenant Governor Fetterman.
Indeed, I would.
Fantastic.
Excellent. So I want to thank everyone that provided questions. I hope both of you had a meaningful experience and a different approach. I haven't watched any other of the debates or anything that you participated in, but I hope you know that this was a thoughtful approach to having a different approach of engaging with you and giving the people an opportunity to see the multifaceted candidates that you are.
And
thank you so much.
Thank you both for joining us. For our audience, thank you for joining us. Thank you to the radio station in Germantown. Just if you want to follow more of Rep. Kenyatta's campaign, you can find it at malcolmkenyatta.com. You can find out more about Lieutenant Governor Fetterman's campaign at johnfetterman.com. Thank you both for joining us today.
And Councilwoman Khalil's.
And you can find Councilwoman Khalil's campaign information at alexkhalil4ussenate.com. That is Alex, Khalil, for ussenate.com.
Listen, thank you for putting up with me with my technical issues, Lieutenant Governor and Representative Kenyatta. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Call me, please.